G'day legends, I hope you're all awesome. I've got the new Headrush PRIME to pull some tones with today. Basically, this is their new flagship piece of hardware. It's got everything the original Headrush has, but kind of more. The screen and display has been updated. You've got 12 onboard foot switches with scribble strips on there. You've got a built-in expression pedal, but a bunch of new things like an amp cloner so that you can capture tones from your existing amps. There's an expanded practice tool, a looper, expanded I/O on here with things like vocal effects and vocal processing, including auto-tune. Spoiler, I'm not going to be looking at those functions on today's video because I do not consider myself a singer at all, but you could kind of use this as an all-in-one guitar vocal looping workstation if you wanted to. I'm mostly going to focus on the general navigation on the touchscreen, some of the new features, and I'm just basically going to build a few little rigs on here and do a whole bunch of noodling. If you're unfamiliar with the Headrush, hopefully this gives you a nice little intro to the product. If you're an existing Headrush user, hopefully this will let you see what the PRIME does that maybe some of the other hardware units don't. So let's dive in. We'll start with some of the features, then I'm going to build a basic rock rig and go from there. Let's take a really quick look at the front panel before we build a rig on here. Pretty much everything you need to run the unit is accessible via the touchscreen. The default view is to have your current rig available on there, and you can scroll through different rigs either by using the foot switches or by scrolling through on the touchscreen itself. You can also see, for example, this preset number 5 over here. That's an example of something using some parallel routing. You can easily create a new preset by hitting the plus button up here if that's what you want to do. You can access foot switch editing with the little foot switch button up here, and then you've got a save button to save your preset up here. If you simply double tap any of these blocks like this reverb here, you get access to pretty much the library of different effects on there. You can tweak parameters over here. You can get in and change the model, and each model comes with a bunch of select presets for it. So for example, the 11 reverb, you got a whole bunch of these different models, and in each model, for example, this arena one, you've got different presets in there. So that's pretty cool. Over on the far left, you've got your setup menu. So you've got a set list function over here, song view. So rather than use a rig and use scenes, you can set it up to just roll through different presets. You've got a bunch of utilities like the tuner, the metronome, and the looper. The metronome is pretty well featured for something on a modeler, actually. You've got the ability to assign its output. You've got different sounds, tempo, turning it on and off and setting the level, which is nice. You've got the looper, like I said earlier. All the firmware updates can be done on the unit because it has Wi-Fi, so you can check for a firmware update by pressing that button. You can add things from your computer, for example, IRs. You don't need an IR loading utility or anything like that. It just is going to be recognized. It's kind of like a USB stick, and you drag and drop things onto there. So that makes things very, very easy. You can even lock the screen for performance mode. You've got a global EQ. You've got a dry output for the built-in microphone, a bunch of global settings. And then on the left, you have a practice tool where you can drag audio into the unit and loop it, slow it down, use it as a practice tool as you would suggest. And we've got the Headrush Cloud, so you can upload your presets, and an amp cloner, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. For now, let's build a rig from scratch from the front panel. You can see I've already started off with 2 elements in here. I have selected an amplifier, which if I double tap, I can get in and have a look at the parameters on there. I've got the 82 lead 850 watts, so 50 watt JCM 800, hard to go wrong. You can see where the controls are at on there. If I wanted to select a different model, I've got this drop down menu here, and I can select different presets within those models. So kind of like block settings, if you like. For now, we'll just roll with that. I'll go back to the main menu. And then if I double tap on here, I've actually loaded up my favorite IR, LTTV Mix 7. You can grab this one from the video description for free. You can see low cut at 80 Hertz, high cut around 8K. Now, one thing that I particularly like about the Headrush is if I just single tap one of these blocks, you get the parameters down along the side. You can scroll along here, and whatever 3 blocks are displayed are mapped onto the 3 encoders on the right of the screen over there. So for example, if I wanted to tweak the high cut, I could use the middle encoder, which you can't quite see. I just twist it over there and I can zoom right in on what I want to get, or the low cut. So having instant access to those parameters when you simply tap a block is really, really nice. And the touchscreen is very, very responsive. Probably the best touchscreen I've tried on a modeler so far. Anyway, we don't play guitar to play around with touchscreens and things like that. We play around to have wicked tones. So let's have a listen to how this sounds. I'm playing my Les Paul Standard on the bridge pickup. That is a pretty nice Marshall style crunch tone on there. If I wanted to tweak anything, you can see I've got all the parameters you would expect on a Marshall: bass, mids, treble. We've got presence, we've got the preamp control, which is your input gain, and the overall master volume. Maybe I'll go for a little less preamp gain, and maybe I'll go for a little more mid-range over here. Let's check that out now. Let's just keep building this rig, and then I'll assign everything to the onboard foot switches. If I'm playing some hard rock music or some rock and roll, I like a wah first thing in chain. So let's press the very first block. You get a list of everything available on here. I'm going to scroll down until I get to wah and filter. I've got a bunch of different options on here. So if I go say boudoir, then I've got presets that I can save in here. For now, we'll just go with the default setting over there. And this is assigned to mode A on the expression pedal. My expression pedal is currently on mode B, so the wah's off. Next, I wouldn't mind being able to kind of kick down the gain on here. So what I might do is add a compressor over here. We've got a bunch of different compressor options. I'm going to go for, I don't know, a pretty classic compressor, just the gray comp over here. And you can see you've got a default setting or 3 factory presets on here. Let's just go with standard issue over here and have a listen to what that does. I can bypass it by pressing down here. So it's kind of just cleaning stuff up a little bit for me. Now, I don't really like a wah after a compressor. If I want to swap these, I can just drag and drop and it will swap the order. Simple as that. Let's bypass the comp for now because I wouldn't mind having a boost to go with all of this. Let's go for overdrive over here and look at all these options we've got over here. So, you know, SD1 into a Marshall is usually a good time. Let's just go for the boost setting. Have a listen to what that does. Very, very nice. That's doing what I would expect an SD1 to do. Because I've got the spare CPU up here, you can see I'm barely kind of touching the side here. I wouldn't mind having a fuzz as an option in this preset as well. A bunch of different distortion and fuzz options over here. Octave fuzz is always kind of my main jam. Let's go for full drive. Have a listen to what that does on here. Very nasty indeed. let's add one more block before the amp. I'm going to go with a phaser. So if I want to get access to things like phasers, chorus, flanger, all that kind of stuff, it is down after the reverb block on here. Let's go phaser. I'll do the typical one. Let's go for the good old, is there a script phaser on here? We've got stone phase, square phase, ring mod, orange phaser. I think that's the one that I want. And let's just go default mono. Have a listen to what we got. That is going to do the job for me right there. I normally like my phaser after my wah and before my drive. So again, we'll just kind of drag and drop some of this stuff. And now I've got my fuzz before my SD1. I actually want that the other way around so that I can boost the fuzz. I'm pretty happy with that order for now. Let's go to the end of the chain. Very quickly add some reverb and delay to all of this. So you've got a bunch of different reverbs in here. Again, I'm going to go with the air reverb, hall, room, studio. Let's go studio. I'm just going to whack that on there. Let's have a listen to the stock tone. Not too shabby with the reverb. Let's add a delay in there. One of my favorite delays in this so far is the M104 analog delay, and just setting it up for quarter note echoes and tweaking the overall mix on here, I think sounds pretty good. A little bit too much feedback for my liking. Bring the mix down to around 30%. Let's kick in, say, the SD1 and the phaser over here. We get this. Now, if I wanted a different rhythmic subdivision, that is really easy to tweak over here. You've got pretty much every subdivision from a bar down to 1/128th on here. Let's get a good old kind of dotted eighth note thing on here, so 3/16. I'll bring the mix up a little bit on this. Also like that you can add a little bit of drive and modulation to this particular delay. What I'm going to add to this before you hear that is some detune. So I'll go before here. The detune actually lives in the chorus section over here. Go detune, and let's go for, I don't know, let's just go standard and see what their idea of a standard detune is. So minus 15%, let's go -9 and +9 over here. Classic Van Halen style thing. 2 voices, level, width. We can dial in some delays on those voices. Go for some slightly shorter delays on their low cut and high cut as they come. We'll just bring the mix down a little bit over there. Let's check out, we've got the boost on, we've got some stereo pitch detune reverb, and now a dotted eighth note delay. That's probably overkill for a typical kind of rock cover gig for me, so let's assign some foot switches in here. If I press this button up here, what I'm going to want for my personal use is maybe, say, 4 different scenes, so different combinations of effects, and then along the bottom, I'm going to have individual effects on and off. So you can see that the top left foot switch is already set to scene 1, but the next foot switch along is set to the looper. So I'm just going to press this button down here. So it's got scene 2. I'm going to do the same thing until I get to scene 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've got scene 5 down here. I don't want 5 scenes though, so what I'm going to do up here is press this button until I get back to boudoir, and then I'm going to change this by pressing the kind of top part of the icon over there. I'm going to set this as my SD1 drive, and I'll make the assignment turning it on. You can see I've also got an SD1 drive over here. I could have just done a drag and drop. For the next one, let's have the detune able to come on and off. And again, very simple assignment. Let's change the S1 drive, say, for the delay. Where did my delay go? M104, analog delay. Let's set it for on. You can also set it up to sync or to have the tails on or off. And then I've got my octave fuzz already assigned over here. So I've assigned the foot switches nice and easily. Next, what I want to do is set up what each scene is doing. So I'm going to hit edit over here. So you can see in this particular preset, I've got all of these blocks. These are their positions. So what I can do is just decide what is going to be on and off. So the amp, I definitely want to have on. The IR, I definitely want to have on. And the reverb, I definitely want to have on across all the scenes. So I'll set them on in scene 1. Then for any other block, you can set them to be on, off, or to not change between scenes, which is a nice, elegant solution to it. So for the first scene, let's have kind of all the fancy stuff over here off, including the wah, including the phaser, the drive, I'll leave off, octave fuzz. So scene 1 is just going to be amp and reverb. Next, I want scene 2. I might want, say, my boost and my delay. So I'll come back here. Let's edit scene 2. You kind of get the idea from here. I'm going to set amp and IR on. I'm going to set the SD1 drive on. I'm going to set the delay on over here and the reverb on as well. I could just set a lot of these to no change, but I specifically actually want certain things to be on or off. So I'm going to go through and program them off. I think for a lot of use cases, you can probably just leave it as no change. Alrighty, so that's what I've got scene 1 and scene 2. Let's go back to the kind of main menu over here. Here's scene 1, which is amp, cab, and reverb. I'll then change to scene 2, which was our lead tone. I also set up 2 more scenes. The third scene is using the gray comp and the detune for a less intense crunch. And then I added 2 more blocks in here, a tape echo and a shimmer reverb, and I've got them on for scene 4. When I go there, play around with them, and I'll bring in the detune and the octave fuzz with their selected foot switches. Let's hear it. So that works nicely. I like a lot more gain a lot of the time though. So I've built a rig around an amp capture or an amp clone that I made of my Boogie Mark IV. We'll take a look at the actual process a little later on, but for now I've just got that particular amp clone, a cab IR, same one, LTTV Mix 7, and reverb. I've got a dynamic delay, detune, a clon style drive, and then the boudoir in this preset. I'll let you hear it. Then what I'm going to do is navigate to the practice tool where I've got a backing track that I made loaded up, and I'm going to play over the backing track. I can change the speed of the track or the pitch either from the touchscreen or from the pedals on here. Let's have a listen to what this sounds like, then we'll hear it over the little track. clone that I made, so I may as well show you the process that goes into making an amp clone. From the main navigation menu, you've got the amp cloner in the bottom left. You hit that, it gives you a warning about not blowing up your amp. Then you have three options. You can do a mic'd amp and cab, you can do an amp and a load or a preamp, or you can do a pedal on here. So what I did was the amp preamp because I shot mine with a load box. You've got a bunch of setup instructions here as well as a connection diagram in here. Because this has a combi jack mic input, makes it pretty straightforward to either just take the signal from your microphone on your cab or just as a DI on there. Once you're set up and ready to go, you can also run phantom power to your mic, which is a nice little touch on there. You set up the clone controls to be the same as your main amplifier, and then you basically go start clone. Now, I actually don't have this set up at the moment. Like I said, I've only made the one capture so far, which you heard a little bit earlier, but essentially, I think it's about a minute-long test signal, and the whole cloning process takes about another minute. So it's quite quick compared to, say, a Quad Cortex or something like the Tone X. You then have a kind of refining stage similar to something like a Kemper on there as well, and you can then load that amp clone into any patch that you like. I assume as well you can load it up to the Headrush cloud over here once you've got an account. I actually don't know. I'll have to check, and I'll answer that in the video description once I have, whether you can load this into something like an MX5 or another Headrush unit. I like to think you can, but don't quote me on that. I'm going to pull up Stumps there. Hopefully that gives you an overview of the Prime, of some of the new functions that it has in there. I didn't really dive into depth on anything just because there are so many things to cover. So if there are particular features you would like me to do an in-depth video on in the future, let me know in the comments section below. Thank you to Mike and the team at Headrush for organizing this demo unit to be sent out to me so that I could make this particular video. I think it's fairly easy to see that this unit, from a workflow and UI perspective, is incredibly well thought out. You've got a very large library of effects and functions, but they're all really easy to access. I didn't have to read the manual on any of this. Built-in Wi-Fi means you basically don't need to hook it up to your computer to update firmware or use any of the expanded tools on here. So if you're somebody who's maybe turned off by other modelers and the fact you might get a slightly better experience out of them by using a computer editor, and you just want something that's fully hands-on on the unit, you might like this. There's the built-in vocal effects and vocal chains, which I didn't look at, and the looper. So you can actually run rigs where you have your guitar and your vocals being processed simultaneously in parallel. You can use the practice tool and the looper, but I mostly wanted to kind of focus on the features that I would personally use. The only thing for me with this is that it is colossally large. This is really quite big and quite heavy. I couldn't see myself using this in a fly rig situation, especially going from something like an FM3, but Headrush do make the gig board and they make the MX5, which are nice and compact. So I'll be very interested to see if they come out with, say, an MX5 Prime, which adds the vocal capability and the amp cloning and the practice tool. Whether that comes via new hardware or via new software will be interesting to see. But for now, I want to hear from all of you. How did you like the tones that I pulled? How did you like the functionality of this unit? I think it's pretty easy to see that it's incredibly easy to use. And I think they kind of nailed the whole UI and touchscreen experience on this. It's probably the most impressive modeler I have tried from that perspective. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers. I really hope you didn't think you were going to get out of this video without hearing me play some guitar with auto-tune on it. Check this out.